Brett.
Hey, Ange.
How's it going?
Pretty good.
Good. Well, that means this is another week of Money in the Bank. We're excited to be back. So we're still doing our promo for people to enter if they haven't yet. They can, if you tell your friends about the podcast in any way, shape, or form, through email, through social media, if you just go ahead and let me know at Angie@moneyinthebankpodcast.com, shoot me an email and you're entered to win $50.
Awesome. That's way better than a trivia question, which I thought is what you were going to say.
Well, that's coming next. So are you ready for your trivia question?
All right.
So our longtime listeners know that Ally bank account is literally my favorite. Not affiliated with them in any way, but if they want to be affiliated with me, that would be great. But so your trivia question is, what is the interest rate on an Ally savings account?
I think it has been like really high at like 1.5%.
And this was a trick question because they just raised the rate last Friday, so it is 1.6%.
Wow. Okay, it's getting even better because I thought it just went up like a couple weeks ago, and now it's up again.
It did. So a year ago we were at 1%, and now we are at 1.6%. So I don't know. People always say like, oh, don't go with a big bank. They don't have your interest in heart. Go with a credit union. But like, guys, Ally has my back.
Yeah, and I just opened a Fifth Third account to get like a promotional, a couple $100 for temporary holdings of money, and that was like they're going to charge me a service charge for in addition to that, and I think no savings rate. So
yeah,
I'll take 1.6% for no fees any day.
You're also spoiling a future episode.
Oh yeah,
we've been dabbling a lot in credit card hacking and bank account hacking to get a lot of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in a couple months, once we've kind of gone through quite a bit of that, I'm gonna blog about our podcast about our experience with that.
Yeah, look forward to that one then, because we've already made like a couple $1,000s this year.
Yeah,
and just playing around with that.
So it's pretty cool. There's all this stuff now that I'm doing, and I'm like, oh, it's for podcast research. And one thing that we're going to talk about today is I sold my car.
Oh yeah, that's been a big ordeal. It was really easy to do. We put a lot of planning into it, right?
Very easy.
It was a little shady how easy it was to actually get rid of your car.
So now, I've talked to some people and I've told them, the right thing to do in your financial situation is to sell your car and get into something cheaper. And I always hear the excuse, well, it's not that easy to sell a car. It is. It took us 15 minutes.
Yeah. All we needed was a driver's license and the title, and they just scanned a couple things and sent us on our way, with a check. So.
Yeah. So we've actually we've hinted at this a lot. I've hinted at the fact that I made a mistake buying that car and that we were going to sell my car. And we have officially been a one-car family for just over a week now. How do you feel?
I was in Chicago all week, so it's not much different. But yeah, you were here with your car. I haven't noticed a difference. We usually drive to go get groceries or anything, together anyway. 90% of the time or more, one of our cars was in the garage at all times because either I work from home or I travel, right? So I don't need it as much, and you work really close, so you either bike to work or, right, unless the weather's terrible, then you may drive, or you need to go across town or something after work and then you drive. But very, very rarely did we ever absolutely need to have both of our cars out of the garage. So it really hasn't impacted us.
Yeah, we were kind of in an interesting situation because Brett works from home most of the time, and I work about just under 5 miles from our house. And so, last week when I had the car, he was consulting, so I dropped him off at the airport, and I had the car all week. And then I realized on Thursday, as I drove to pick him up, that was the first time I had used the car since he had been gone. So even going down to one car, I still felt like I didn't really need it, for 90% of my week.
Right. And I think, you had put 20 miles out around the car or something since I had left, and I think that was all from driving back and forth to the airport.
Yeah, well, so, the other funny thing was when we were talking about selling my car, one of the justifications was so far, year to date, I had put less than 1,000 miles on my car. So then we kind of thought, well, if we're not putting them on my car, obviously they're getting put on the Civic. And the best thing was when I was like, well, how many, or no, it came
It
up
was
because you were
my
like,
oil
maybe I
change.
needed an oil
Yeah.
change, and I was checking that, but it said I don't. And I said, well, how many miles have we put on the Civic so far this year? And it was just over 1,000. So not only
Since January.
since January, so far for the year. So not only were we just not putting that many miles on my car, we're just not driving that much. And I think, something else to highlight is I think a lot of people would say like, oh, well, that's great for your situation that you just happen to live close to work and you can bike to work and Brett just happens to work from home. But we actually created this scenario. So when we lived in Chicago, you did not work from home all the
Right.
time. And when we first moved back to town, I lived about 10 miles away from my office and I drove in every single day. So we were really intentional with buying our house to make sure we were in an area where I could bike to work and I could bike to the grocery store. And that really allowed us. That was kind of like the key component to us going down to one car.
Right. And we can even, and we have done this several times, bike to the farmer's market. So, I mean, we've covered all of our bases, especially in the summer, so we can still get really cheap produce, really good quality produce from this farmer's market, and we don't even have to drive there, right? And work is all covered, right? So we have all of our basic necessities covered in this scenario for where we are, right? And
Yeah.
that's very, very intentional for where we are.
So now, what about the subgroup of people that say, oh, well, I couldn't sell my vehicle because I need a truck to haul things?
Well, it's funny, every time we pull into anywhere or drive past any driveways, the truck beds that we see, either nobody's hauling anything, or the things that we have ever needed to haul wouldn't fit in a truck anyway.
Yeah. So I brought up this specific scenario because right before we sold my car, we were installing a French drain in our backyard, and we needed 10-foot sewer pipe segments.
11, yeah.
Or 11-foot. And we got them in my Ford Escape, but we had to make 2 trips because we couldn't fit 4 of them because it was literally like touching the glass, running at a diagonal all the way to the back of the vehicle.
Right, and that was maxed out at 2, or maybe we fit 3 in there.
We shoved 3 in there, but the gate wasn't closed, and it just kept like freaking out the whole way home and unlocking and relocking the car.
Mm-hmm.
That could have completely broken it. And the funnier thing about that is, in hindsight, we realized we should have taken the Civic to pick up the sewer pipes.
Right, that would have been for that particular job. That would have been more effective because we have the roof racks that we use for the paddle boards, and that would have been completely effective.
And we could have just strapped them on the roof.
Right, because the paddle boards are a little bit longer than 11 feet and a couple inches or something, and so the pipes would have fit perfectly in there.
Yeah. So, and the other thing we realized is, we do a lot of our own home maintenance, but if we ever really need to haul something that we cannot fit, on the roof racks, Home Depot has a rental truck that sits in the parking lot. A van, actually, which is
they have trucks,
even
they have
more
vans,
convenient.
They have different vehicles.
And you can rent it for like $20 for an hour, which we live so close that we could obviously, get it all home and unload it and back. So when we crunched the numbers, we're saving, I think when I crunched the numbers, we're saving about $4,000 a year at a minimum by selling my car. And so, that's breaking down to we have about, $350 a month. That if we don't spend more than $350 a month on rental cars or rental trucks from Home Depot, then we're coming out ahead.
Right, and that means like the gas transferred over to my car because we'd be driving like just as much as we would have before, but it's all the reduced maintenance cost of your car, the wear and tear on your vehicle, mostly in the insurance, right, and taxes,
the depreciation.
And depreciation because
I was putting such few miles on my car at this point. But what people don't realize is even, I was selling a car with 40,000 miles on it that was, 5 years old. But now at this point, I was really only putting about 2,000 to 3,000 miles on my car a year. And if you see a 10-year-old car that only has, 50,000 miles on it, it's not like it can still sell for a 2-year-old car that has 50,000 miles on it. People do kind of value the age of the car as well. So you do have a lot of depreciation running off, even if you're not driving that much, right? I mean, they always say as soon as you drive that car off the lot, you just, lose 20%.
Right, absolutely. And that's right. There's no good reason for that. Like the car, I mean, maybe if it was sitting around not being driven ever, like it would deteriorate in some way. That's not necessarily good for the vehicle. But right, having a really, really low mileage vehicle that's 10 years old, people are still just not going to pay top dollar for that, even
Right.
though you've put like no wear and tear on the car whatsoever, and maybe you've actually taken really good care of it. It's all perception. So yeah, it's rarely ever or never a good idea to buy a new vehicle because you're definitely going to lose half the value of that vehicle to thin air.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, if you're going to drive it for 20 years, whatever, you don't really care at that point. Um, but it's something to keep in mind. And, that actually brings me to a point I wanted to make, that very few people understand how much their car is really costing them. So, I actually had somebody asking me, like, oh, why did you sell your car? It was paid off. Yes, it was paid off, but I was still paying insurance, registration. I was still eating a couple grand of depreciation a year. And on the flip side, with the lump sum of money I got out of my car, I can invest in something else now that is not a depreciating asset rotting in my garage.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge component for me. I can throw that money in the stock market and earn 7% average on it. Or, in Lansing, I could buy half of a house with that money.
Pretty close, yeah.
So, that was a huge factor too, is cars are a lot more expensive than people think. And I know we've really talked about it in the past, but I will never stop emphasizing that, because I think so many people, could really get to the next level of their financial journey if they just took a hard look at their vehicle selection.
So we had this exact example, or I did, when I moved to Chicago. So I had my car. I bought it when I graduated from high school. I drove it while I was in college in town. So I had like only highway miles on it, and then like 10 minutes back and forth to school, every other day or something. Um, and then I moved to Chicago, left it in my parents' garage, didn't take it with me. So they took care of it. My dad would like drive it occasionally, right? Really taking good care of it, getting it washed and waxed like every week, right? So was that the right thing for me to do in that scenario? Was to just hold onto it in a storage unit or a garage for 3 years until I came back and moved back and then used the car again? Or would it have been smarter for me to, you know, take the money, sell the car at that time, take the money, invest the money, and then buy a new car for the exact same value I sold it for?
Yeah, so my emotional reaction is that you made the right decision, because I love Victor. I love our Civic. It's a great car. We have a lot of life left in it. And, it's a great vehicle for us to own, so I'm glad we own it now. But realistically, the best storage unit is Craigslist. So you really probably should have sold your car before, when you left for Chicago. Then you had 3 years of not needing a car. So, in Michigan, insurance is quite expensive. So really, that was probably about $3,000 right there, let alone depreciation.
Well, there was no insurance on it because they weren't driving it. I don't even think they put it on their plan.
You had insurance on the car, because we would come back and you would drive it. And if your
Oh,
parents were
yeah.
driving it around town, it had to have insurance on it.
You're right. So
So,
either or in that scenario.
yeah, married couple, you're right. That's always the right thing to say. But yeah, so with 3 years of insurance, that's, $3,000 plus the depreciation. And even with it just, honestly, the fact that your parents were willing to drive it around was better, because when cars just sit there, tires go low and a lot of components, they need to be run regularly. Cars just sitting there is a really bad thing. So,
right, your tires will rot.
yeah. And the fact that you didn't need it at all for those 3 years. So you could have sold it, taken that money, invested it, and 3 years later you would have, had 3 years of compound interest on your money, and you could have taken it back out and bought that exact same vehicle.
And taken money away.
And had money to take with you. So, it wasn't the most optimal decision that you had made at that point. It worked well for us. But also, we ended up moving back to Michigan a lot faster than we thought we were going to. So if you would have stayed in Chicago for 10 years, and never needed that car, that would have been a pretty detrimental thing to have paid for.
Right, because then it would have been So at that point, it would have been 15 years old, and right, even if it has 40,000 miles on it, which is what it had when we moved, then nobody wants it still because it's almost 15-year-old car. So
Right.
it's not going to be worth more than a couple $1,000s anyway,
Yeah.
regardless.
So, that actually kind of brings me to two good points that I want to make in this podcast. One is sunk cost fallacy. Have you ever heard about that?
No.
So basically what that is, well, and it's honestly why I didn't sell my car faster than I did is, oh, well, it's already paid off. So it's the idea that, well, I already put all of this money into it, so now it's a good decision to just hold on to it.
Right.
When really sometimes the right answer is to cut your losses, cash out, and move forward.
Right.
And I, when I work with people, I do a lot of kind of financial planning and coaching on the side. But when I work with people, when I work with clients, this is a very common thing. Is like, oh, well, I already purchased this vehicle, so it's off the table. And I'm like, oh, no. When you bring me in to help with your finances, nothing is off the table. But it's a big problem for people because they're like, oh, well, I already bought this $40,000 truck and it's paid for. And I'm like, okay, great. So you can sell it for 30 and we can get you into a car for 10 and you can, throw $20,000 at your debt. But a lot of times people don't want to hear that because it's kind of this idea that like it's the emotional aspect of you've already sunk this money into it and you don't want to feel like you made a mistake. So you just hold on to it. And I know for years that was true of me with my car. It was paid off. So I just felt like, oh, well, I already have this paid off vehicle. Why not keep it? And then once I really started realizing how much it was costing me just to hold on to that vehicle every year, I was like, yeah, the right thing to do is for me to let go of it.
Oh, I mean, it's human nature to be protective of your assets, right? It's yours. Like, you want to hold on to it. You want to make it last as long as you can, extract as much value out of it as you can. But yeah, you got to look at the whole picture, and really nobody looks at that whole picture to say this thing's a money pit, more or less, right?
And another big thing is if you're still making payments on a vehicle, payments that really you probably can't afford or shouldn't be affording, it is never too late to be like, hey, I made a mistake and I just need to sell this car and get out of it. I've worked with people that they were a couple grand underwater on a vehicle, and I was like, you're going to have to bring $2,000 to the table to get out of this car, but you need to get out of this car because you are driving around way too much vehicle and it is way too expensive. And the sooner you sell it and just like eat that mistake and own up to it, the faster that you can get into the right vehicle for you and really start building wealth.
Right, especially underwater on a vehicle, right? You can't stop the bleeding, which is that payment that you still always have to contribute to until you can, put the tourniquet on it, which is the down payment, or pay the whole thing off and then just get out from underneath it.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So kind of on the same page, are you ready to talk about your very favorite topic?
Trivia questions?
No, genuinely your favorite topic.
Compound interest? Oh, opportunity cost.
Yeah.
All right.
So, that's the other kind of edge of the sword. So one is the sunk cost fallacy of like, oh, well, I already paid for it. The other is understanding the opportunity cost of not having it. So it's not for everybody, but if you would have asked me even 4 years ago if I would be living in a one-car household where the one car that we kept was our older vehicle, the Civic, I would have laughed in your face. But the more that we analyzed the numbers, the more we understood the opportunity cost of holding on to my vehicle. So by selling the 2013 Escape I had, we are going to be able to do some really cool things. Like things I am really excited to talk. We can't really talk about them yet because we don't really know yet. But we have ideas and we have some really cool ideas. So I hope they come to fruition and I hope we can further elaborate on them. But it's the whole point of like, every time we spend money, not just with something as big as a car, but literally when Brett goes and travels, on a consulting job, he does not go out to eat for lunch because he is analyzing the cost of that like $5 lunch out and being like, would I rather have this $5 lunch or would I rather save this money to do something better? And that is opportunity cost.
Right, because by the time, every $5 a day, 4 days a week that I'm gone, right, that's $20 a week. right? And then times how, if I'm on the project for 10 weeks or something, that's $200, right? I can do a lot with $200, but when you're there day by day, you're just like, oh yeah, it's easy to get rid of it. Or especially getting a coffee 3 o'clock in the afternoon with everybody else in the office, right? Going down to whatever the little coffee shop is in whatever company you work for.
Au
That's
bon pon?
right. It's a very yeah, maybe that's a very easy thing to do because you have the crowd mentality forcing you to do it because okay, let's go take a break. It's like people that smoke, right? It's like going out and taking a smoke break. Like everybody just wants to go be part of that social group and go do what everybody else is doing and take a break from work, more importantly. And your excuse to do that requires you to either inhale cigarette smoke or buy coffees, right? That's those two most common excuses. Same with lunch, right? Everybody's going out to eat for lunch. What are you going to do? You're going to go out to eat lunch with them because that's what everybody wants you to do. That's what you want to do. It's crowd mentality. So if you can
Peer
break,
pressure.
yeah, social engineering, yeah. So if you can break that cycle, right, getting all that money back from that coffee or from that pack of cigarettes or from the cost of lunch, if you're not bringing your own lunch, then it really adds up over time, and those really snowball more than anything on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and recently, okay, so I would say, us financial, I don't know, what do you even call us? Financial podcasters, financial
Crazy people,
crazy
yeah.
people. Us frugal people have been telling you for years to get rid of your coffee. Recently, there has been this huge tidal wave of people turning back and be like, my coffee is not the reason that I am poor. And there's been studies on the latte effect. And sure, if you're getting it once in a while, I am not talking to you. I get coffee once in a while. But if every day you are going out to lunch or you are getting coffees or you are joining people for happy hour, it matters. I think the biggest lesson I learned is that a millionaire is made $10 at a time. The average millionaire in America is not the people that are making crazy buku dollars. It is middle income people making really good decisions every single day.
Right. And it's the people that have earned being a millionaire, right? Not the kids that have just inherited it from their family because the interest rate in their bank account is like more than what 10 middle income families make all combined, right?
Right.
Those people, forget those people. Right. The people that have like earned it from the ground up have made their own wealth. They have done it, yeah, $10 at a time.
Right. And I think that's something to keep in mind, as you are analyzing your portfolio and thinking through opportunity cost, like we've kind of viewed our finances as almost a business. So like, with selling my car, it was like, what's the right decision for the business? And it was to kind of get that capital back sooner and be able to invest it in something that could make us more money. So, from an actuarial standpoint, we wanted that, to be generating free cash flow instead of consuming it and creating economic value. For you non-actuaries out there, I'm sorry. But that I say that to say it is important to analyze these decisions, and I think it extends further from these bigger things to also, analyzing, but I will, and I think maybe that's my point here is that it really started with us 4 years ago. We were like, let's get better with our finances. And we started doing it slowly. It was like, let's make sure that we're, home making all of our lunches. Whether we're in the office or at home, we're not going to go out to lunch anymore. And then shortly after that, it was, let's stop going out to dinner so much. And let's really hone that in. And then it was, okay, Angela, like, you've been buying coffee at work 3 days a week, so let's just cut that out. And then we keep going further into the rabbit hole, and all of a sudden it was, let's sell your 2013 vehicle and inject that capital in. And like now the magic is happening, right?
Oh yeah, it's been a very, step-by-step process exactly like that, right? Learning how to cook more, cooking more for dinner and not going out to eat, optimizing your groceries, right? It's just one thing after the next, and you just progress one thing at a time. You can't go from where we were 4 years ago, just like doing whatever we felt like and not thinking about anything, and just kind of putting money away in a 401k because somebody told us to being completely optimized with our financial picture and having investment properties and diversified portfolios across the board and really optimized our income and optimized our spending, right? So we're not spending hardly anything anymore, right? You can't just do that overnight. Like no matter what you look at, it's a cultural shift that you have to go through and be comfortable with and adopt. Otherwise, you won't be successful with it.
Right.
If you go from 0 to 60 in that model, it's going to break you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a slower progression. I mean, you can probably do it a little bit faster than we were if you're like really hitting the ground with it, but we're pretty focused on it now. Like everything that we look at, I mean, we're all in on optimizing everything that we're doing and looking at things. And I don't eat lunch when I'm traveling, so because I'm that
And
conscious
I
of it.
unplug everything in the house.
Yep, she is losing her mind. She's unplugging the TVs. She unplugged her phone charger because she thought it was drawing energy.
Guess
from the
what
wall.
our electric and gas bill was last month, though?
Probably 50% of what it normally is. Because
you can't argue with results.
You're kidding me that this is working. Are you kidding me? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
So usually in the summer, which I say summer because we're not running the heater 24/7, our electrical bill last year was probably about $75-$80. Last month it was $58. So the reason I'm so proud about this is
$10 less. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, but that's a big deal. $20 less, and that's a big deal on this because a lot of it's base charges. I can't get those to go away. That's like $25 right there.
Well, we could talk them down.
But the reason I say that is every month when you get your bill, it compares you and it says like your home, efficient home, average home. So in the past, I always tried to make sure we were under the average home. But last month, for the very first month, we were more efficient than the efficient home. And I was super proud about that because we aren't, a super efficient house. It's not like we have solar or anything to offset that. And, we have a finished basement. So we have a 2,500 square feet of finished space and our bill was under $60. And I mean, we talked to other people with similar size homes that are paying $200, $300 for their electric and gas bills.
Oh, most people we talk to, yeah, for houses, I mean, comparable or larger than ours, really, but
yeah,
that's a huge difference.
So I mean, even if you can just half of that, you're saving $100. That's $1,200 a year. Start thinking about that. What could you do if you had an extra $1,200 a year? And once you start, realizing the different investment potential out there, you're going to be retired before you know it, and it's a beautiful thing. So, all right, well, we got derailed. I don't know. We were supposed to be talking about my car, and then I started talking about my crazy unplugging things. I don't know how we got here, but we got here. Hopefully we provided some valuable information today. I think we did. Ultimately, I will definitely keep you guys updated. It's been 1 week that we've been a one-car family. I don't know how this is going to continue to go. Honestly, I'm still a little bit hesitant about it. I've owned my own vehicle since I was 16 years old, so it's not like this was easy for me to do. It's definitely been a little bit harder, like emotionally, to process, but it's been great. This 1 week, it's been great. I will keep you updated. If we buy another vehicle, I will walk you through that process, and if we don't, I will let you know like how we manage, because I think it's pretty cool to reduce our consumption.
Right. And for people that aren't familiar, we live in the Midwest and in an area where public transportation is not great. So having one car is, having a car in general is the absolute norm. Having a car per person of somebody that is able and the right age to drive cars is 100% normal. Right.
Oh, yeah. And I would say like me biking to work and making that happen is super abnormal. All of my coworkers think I'm crazy and I'm basically risking my life every day.
Right.
Essentially is the like common thought process.
Just for anybody that was like listening in Chicago and they're like, of course you don't need to have a car because
yeah,
our public transportation is amazing.
No, and that's a good point. My coworker the other day actually told me like, if this is the life you want to live, why don't you just move to Eastern Europe? And I was like, I wish I could, but I can't. So I think what's even cooler is that I'm not just talking the talk, I am biking the bike. And like,
oh, that was lame. That was so lame.
That was lame. But I'm making it work, like literally in Midwest, everybody here drives America. So if I can do it, like you can too. You just have to want to do it. Which is cool. All right. Well, like I said at the beginning, we still have our contest running, so go ahead and enter that to win $50. and, leave a review or shoot me an email where you shared our podcast with somebody, and I will drop all of our contact information in.
Thanks, guys.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Money in the Bank. Make sure to subscribe to us on the iTunes or Stitcher app so that you get weekly alerts every time we post a podcast. Or if you want, you can visit my website, moneyinthebankpodcast.com. And if you want to reach out with any questions or further comments, please email me at Angie@moneyinthebankpodcast.com. I look forward to hearing from you.
Money in the bank.